14th through the 16th. Make plans to be at the Indiana Black Expo Summer Celebration Exhibition Hall at the Indiana Convention Center. This year, every day is free to the public. Come experience more than 300 exhibitors, including the InShape Indiana Black and Minority Health Fair, where you get $2,000 worth of free screenings, the Ann Paris and Reggie Wayne Celebrity Basketball Game, the fashion show, and the new feature, The Day Party, starring Kool Moe Dee and Case live in concert. And Sunday, July the 16th, we close it out with the Gospel Explosion, starring Ernest Pugh. For more information, go to IndianaBlackExpo.com.
Hi, I'm Robert Mathis. I spent 14 years playing for your Indianapolis Colts. During that time, I noticed a lot of violence in what has become my city as well. Our most precious resource is being lost at a rapid rate. That resource is our future, better known as our children. I'm here to tell you that I love you. I love the city. I'm Indy, Indy is me. Please, please stop the violence. I'm Robert Mathis, and I am your brother.
Good Sunday afternoon. This is Tanya Bell, President and CEO of Indiana Black Expo, and your host of the Expo Show. One of the purposes of the show is to share information with you about what IBE does throughout the year in the community. Today's show will focus on IBE's Education Conference, a conference that provides teachers, educators, and administrators with resources, best practices, and professional development training in pedagogy, as well as classroom management, effective behavioral models, and in K through 12 and higher education. This is our 10th year anniversary, and we have some great workshops and keynotes planned this year. Our education conference takes place on Thursday, July 13th at 8 a.m. at the Indiana Convention Center, and we have over 500 educators, administrators, and faculty registered. Today we have with us our first guest, who has been a partner with us on our education conference for a while now, Dr. Sean Bush, who is the Director of Student Services of Lawrence Township. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I want to first just ask you some questions because I know you've been involved in, with respect to this show, Indiana Black Expo has always brought the experts to the table to help plan the show. So even though we put on a lot of events, we just want to make sure that our audience realizes that, you know, we have experts at the table that's helping us put this on. So we would not put on an education conference without educators being at the table. And so you've been a partner for a while, and just want to kind of get your thoughts with respect to the education conference in general.
Okay, one of the things that I appreciate most about the conference is that you have the experts at the table. So by bringing people from different districts to the table on the planning committee, you get a diverse group of people to give input on what's important to educators, you know, at this time, and how we can best reach out to the rest of the community to give them topics that they're interested in and that they're looking for in the field of education.
Absolutely. So I know over the past few years, there's really been a focus on having alternatives to suspensions and expulsions. And I have had the opportunity to work on some projects and to produce a report. And part of that, there was some alarming data in the report because it talked about how Indiana is like tied for the worst in the country as it relates to suspensions and expulsions of African American male students. And so I know we've tried to make sure that the workshops actually provided professional development training in that area in order for us to do better. And so just want to get your thought, because I know that that has been a focus, and just wanted to see, you know, what you feel the pulse is in the community with respect to that type of work.
Okay, I am so glad that Indiana Black Expo has continued to have alternatives to expulsion and suspension as a topic. So often when we have things like this where we are presenting workshops. You know, it's kind of like, you know, well, we don't want to do that again. We've already talked about that. But for this topic, it's not going to be something that changes overnight. Traditionally in schools, there has been a tendency to administer punishment that's punitive. And it ends up pushing out, affecting mostly our students of color, particularly black males. So I'm glad that the conference has continued to bring this topic back, because it's going to take a mind shift, and it's going to take some time for educators, even parents. You know, parents often expect punitive discipline. And we're really trying to shift away from that so that we're able to keep students in school as often as we can.
Absolutely. So have you seen a change? Because I know, you know, for a while and for so many years that a lot of school districts had the zero tolerance policies, in which arguably leads to the suspensions and expulsions issue that we actually have. And I'm just curious to know, just talking to you because you're in the field, if you're seeing out there, even with respect to some of your colleagues and educators that are attending other or working in other school districts, if you're seeing a change in culture with moving away from some of those zero tolerance policies that have affected African American kids.
I do believe that there has been some movement away from zero tolerance, because I think that most educators realize that everything is situational, and you can't take one type of infraction or one type of behavior or incident and always administer the same kind of consequence, because there's too many other factors that come into play when you're looking at a situation. So we have to consider all of those factors when figuring out what is going to be the best consequence, and move away from wanting the consequence to be a punishment, and making it a consequence that's going to be something that the child will learn to make a different decision the next time. So we want discipline. You know, discipline means to teach. So we want the discipline to be something that's going to make the child make a better choice.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that. You know, recently, we've been doing a lot of work with the Children's Policy and Law Institute, working with the president over there, Janae Hanger. And with a lot of the work that we're doing, even with some of our partners in the community, where, you know, we partnered with Pastor Danelle Howard and John Marshall. And one of the concepts that CPLI is looking at, and it's one of the topics that we will present and actually have some folks come from out of town and do a workshop on, is dealing with trauma-informed care. And the reason why I think that it's so important is because right now, in our first show that we actually had, talked about some of the violence in our community and you know, some of the work that we're doing to combat the violence. But with respect to this trauma-informed care model, one of the things from my understanding is that it really looks at the and it acknowledges that there's always something behind or something that triggers behavioral issues as it relates to our kids, and that, you know, many of them have experienced so much trauma in our communities. And, you know, the concern, I guess, for us as a community and as a community leader is, are we effectively responding to that in the schools? And so I just want you to kind of talk about trauma-informed care, what your thoughts are about that. But I'm happy to see that it is something that the steering committee, which you've worked on, has really focused on bringing to the forefront of the education conference this year.
Okay. So when we look at our students who are in our schools, schools are truly a microcosm of the larger community. And when we see these stories about the violence that goes on in our communities, those are our kids' mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, and we do have to be really cognizant of the fact that these events, these things that are happening, certainly have an impact on students and on their ability to focus and attend to what's going on in school. If they've got huge issues that they're dealing with at home, it's very, very difficult for their brains actually to be ready to come in to school and focus on, reading and writing when the tension at home or the fear at home can be overpowering. So trauma-informed care, I think, is critical because it does get to the why. What is at play here before the chair gets thrown or before the big blow up? Every child has a story. And we have to consider what has happened in this child's life that has brought about this anger or this anxiety that manifests itself in these negative behaviors. And if we can address those issues and help to provide whatever it is, if it's mental health counseling, if it's activities, involvement in some kind of extracurricular situation, or help with the basic needs of the family even. If we can address some of those underlying issues, then our kids can come to school and be there to learn. And it's not such a, an adversarial kind of environment because of all their adverse experiences.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that because as a community leader, we're really trying to figure out, okay, what is it that we can do more effectively to really address some of those things that are happening in our community. And we realize that if the schools are addressing it there, because we know that's where the students are, then it will really help us deal with some of those things. So I'm very excited with respect to the education conference. I just want to thank you for all of the work and the time that you've put in and the fact that Lawrence Township has believed in our mission and believed in what we're doing with the education conference. And so thank you so much, and look forward to the education conference coming up real soon. So at this time, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we will listen to our second guest about our education conference. We'll be right back.
I'm Joe Hogsett, and as mayor of Indianapolis, one of the most heartbreaking experiences is witnessing young people denied a future because of senseless violence. These losses aren't statistics for our community. Each loss is someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend. Every life lost is one too many. So let's find ways to resolve conflicts peacefully, and let's work together to make our neighborhoods safer. You are not a statistic. You are a person. You are the future. You are my brother.
Saturday, July the 15th, get ready for the IBE Music Heritage Festival #2, starring Indy's own Kitty Babyface Edmonds. With special guest, the incomparable Fantasia, along with Shantae Moore. Tickets are on sale now at the Bankers Life Fieldhouse box office, the Indiana Black Expo box office, or at indianablackexpo.com. Saturday, July the 15th, Babyface, Fantasia, Shantae Moore at Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
Welcome back to the Expo Show. Before the break, we were talking about the education conference that takes place on Thursday, July 13th inside the Indiana Convention Center. And we're very, very excited about the conference. And I have with me today a special guest who is Teresa Lovers, our commissioner with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. Ms. Lovers, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be here. Looking forward to talking about this really important issue.
Yes, very happy to have you. We were talking off camera with respect to the higher education component that we have added to the education conference this year. And one of the things that has really been a focus of Indiana Black Expo, and then a focus amongst others in the community, is just really looking at access and retention of minority students in college. And I know this falls right under your umbrella with your line of work. And I just wanted to first, I'll get into the conference in a minute, but just first want to talk to you with respect to your thoughts on how we're doing in Indiana compared to the rest of the world.
Well, I suppose the good news is we're making progress. The challenge is we aren't anywhere where we need to be yet in terms of these important issues of actually access to college, persistence in college, and then of course the real prize is completion. So we have a big goal in Indiana that 60% of Hoosiers would have some sort of quality degree or credential beyond high school. That includes certificates, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, and beyond. We're at about 41% right now, and that number is up. It ticks up slowly. And we disaggregate all of our information by race, ethnicity, and look very specifically at that. In addition to that 60% goal, the Commission established a goal to close the achievement gap by 2025 and cut it in half by 2018. So we have a measure that we're following how students are doing. At all of our institutions, we're seeing progress. I'm not comfortable that we're getting there quickly enough. Our 2025 goal right now, we would still show that we still have a gap by 2025 unless we double down on our efforts.
With respect to, I know you said that we're making progress with respect to some of the institutions. I serve as a trustee of Indiana State University. I'm just curious, with looking at the progress that have been made, have you been able to see areas that are doing better, and if they're focused on certain mentoring or tutoring or whatever those sort of retention programs are, has anything stuck out?
That's a great question, and yes, I think we have. We see, for example, that summer bridge programs make a big difference. Okay. We have a fall off sometimes from people, even our 21st century scholars, who we think are going to show up, and then those summer months something happens. So we have summer bridge programs. We find that first year experiences are very important, that learning communities are very important. At Indiana State, for example, they've really worked to, I have a mentor who is a minority teacher with minority students. We have our juniors and our seniors who are 21st century scholars, working with our younger scholars when they come in. What we find is that we can't let our students be anonymous when they arrive on college campus, or even if they're living at home and they're a commuter student. The idea that all of a sudden I'm 18 and I'm ready for the world and everything's going to be fine.
Right.
We just have to make sure that we still wrap our arms around them and make sure that when it gets hard, that we're going to have people there to help them, and they're going to get over that little hump and stay until they finish. So those are programs. The Inside Track is a program that was used at Indiana State and other college campuses that we really coach our 21st century scholars so that we don't once again lose them. We see what is it that's happening that's keeping you from succeeding or making it likely that you might not persist past that first year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like, and I know we've had conversations about it, that there are a variety of factors, obviously, that play a role with respect to completion. Economics can be one, as well as the academic side. And so it's good to see that we know where we need to hone in order for us to actually make that go. I want to segue into the education conference. And first, I want to just tell you I'm so excited that the Commission is partnering with us this year on the education conference. And it's my understanding that the Commission is going to do a workshop. And can you just share with the viewers some details with respect to that workshop?
I think the workshop is really going to look specifically at college readiness. So what do we need to do to make sure that students are academically and financially ready? And then persistence when we get there, and then completion are sort of the three buckets. We obviously will spend a lot of time talking about the 21st Century Scholars Program. We have 110,000 students who are either between 7th grade sign up and those who are in college. And this is a contract we make to our students, first generation students for the most part, low income, that if you do what you need to do in high school, we'll make sure you can afford to go to college. But we know it's not just affordability, as important as affordability is. It's also finding a way when they get there that they're a part of learning communities, that they do have coaches, that they do have mentors. So we're going to talk about some of those successful practices as well. I think it also is helpful for students to begin to think about not just learning separate from what they're going to do in life, but this connection between what you learn and what you do. So we really work hard to make sure our students are exposed to the world of work earlier in their college experience. And, sometimes all we know is, what our small circle have been doing in terms of job. We don't even know what the opportunities are. Right. We don't even know what some of the jobs are going to be called. The world is changing so quickly right now. We need to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind.
I'm glad that you mentioned career connections, because I know that that's something that we are starting to look at as an organization. We focused on access, and we've kind of focused on just, graduation rates and all of those things. But even with respect to some of our partners, there's this big emphasis on career connections. And I just want to kind of get your thought at the higher ed level with respect to how universities are doing in that area, with respect to experiential learning and internships, and just making sure that we are exposing the students at the higher ed level when they're in college to work.
We've seen a huge increase in the number of internships. We've reinvented what was Indiana's sort of work-study program, so that it's called Earn Indiana, where we now, the state pays for half, the employer pays for half. It used to be that, a lot of times you took whatever summer job or whatever whatever kind of job it would pay you the most money. It might have nothing to do with what you were actually going to do or what your major would be. So now this makes it possible for people to actually have access to internships. We've seen about a 350% increase in the number of employers that are actually providing those kinds of experiences. It's a great way for employers to look at students, and it's a great way for students to think, this is either what I want to do, or maybe this is not what I want to do. So it gives them the opportunity to see that.
And I'm happy to report to you that Indiana Black Expo is an employer that has signed up with Earn Indiana, and we plan to hire 2 students this year. And so, I didn't really I didn't know about the program until I sat down with someone within your office, and I was like, this is great, because on the employer side, it gives us an opportunity, particularly, running a nonprofit organization with the lack of capacity that we have. And so I think it's a value added not only to the student, but also to the employer as well. So very, very excited about that program. You mentioned earlier about 21st Century Scholars, and while I have you here, I do want to ask, because I know our Indianapolis chapter of Indiana Black Expo has really worked alongside the commission and Indiana University and some other partners with respect to, and schools, and some of the schools, with respect to getting students signed up for that initiative. And just want to get thoughts from you on how you feel the community can play a more active role in making sure that we get our students signed up, because we're talking about your education being paid for.
That's right. That's right. And I think having the communities, churches, organizations make sure that students understand that 7th and 8th grade sign up, is so critically important. We're happy to report that we've instituted now this Scholar Success Program. So once students are signed up, and that's the first step. I mean, after all, unless you do that, you can't get the scholarship. But once we get them to sign up, what are the things that we can do in high school to make it more likely that they will be successful? So there was some concern because there were these 12 activities that scholars need to participate in. I'm delighted to tell you that our affirmation rates and our college going rates are actually the highest level now that we've seen before. We are going to exceed past practices with affirmation rates with the new Scholars Success Program that's in place. And these activities were picked very carefully in coordination with our 21st Century Advisory Council. What are the things that we could do to make it more likely that when students do take advantage of the scholarship, that they actually see it through all the way. And so, yes, the sign-up is important, and we can't take our eye off of that ball, but we also need to do, what can we do during those years when they're in high school to prepare them? And then once they get to college, what do we have to do to wrap our arms around them to make sure they finish?
Absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do as an organization and as a community, feel free to continue to let us know what our role is. I do think that is a very important program. And so I just, want to thank you for, number one, coming on this show, which is a new show for us. And we're looking we're looking forward to actually partnering with you guys this year on the education conference. And so looking forward to strengthening that partnership over the years. And so thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, this will be a great opportunity for us to spread the word.
Thank you so much. For those of you who are interested in registering for our education conference, please go online to www.indianablackexpo.com. It's not too late. We look forward to seeing you there. So thank you so much for allowing us to share information about our education conference. We look forward to joining you here again next week.
That was his song. It's moments like that that make me remember how he constantly talked and laughed and how he loved everyone and had a love for the community. That's why it hurts that when my son was murdered, no one stepped up to say anything. Imagine it was your father, your brother, your uncle, your cousin, your friend. Wouldn't you want to know? God answers prayers, and I pray that someone would do the right thing. I am your sister.
Friday night, July the 14th in Indianapolis. Get ready for the IBE Free Outdoor Concert, the Music Heritage Festival #1, starring Johnny Gill, Atlantic Star, plus the Zap Band. Get your VIP tickets right now for $40 at the IBE box office or IndianaBlackExpo.com or call 317-923-3037. Indiana Black Expo, July the 14th through the 16th in Indianapolis.